Hello and welcome to Green Shoots, a show where we have a heart to heart chat with the founders of startups to understand the genesis, nurturing, and the growth of their startups. I'm Anisha Nayar Dhawan. On this show, we are joined today by Robin Chhabra, founder of Dextrus. A warm welcome to the show. Robin, how are you?
Hi, Anisha. Doing good. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So Dextrus has a co-working space in Mumbai's Bandra Kurla complex and Lower Parel. And of course, Robin has vast amounts of knowledge of real estate, co-working, architectural design, resource management, and customer experience. So, Robin, what made you come up with this idea of having a co-working space, and when did you set up Dextrus?
It was an interesting personal journey. I think for us, for me, I'm professionally an architect. I've spent almost 12 years working in the architecture field in different companies abroad and things like that. And I was very keen to understand the design aspects as well as the real estate aspects. We kind of, as designers, you're always looking at design, you're not looking at the business of design. So I think I was very keen on understanding the business of design in particular in India. And it kind of dawned on me that I wasn't getting a sense of that as much. I was too involved in design all the time. And co-working was kind of coming into the picture in 2016. It was still very nascent. We were kind of hearing murmurs about WeWork, and it was still something out of New York, and it wasn't as big as it is today. And it got me thinking that co-working is an interesting juxtaposition of design and business thinking, and it helps you because you have to think of the real estate product very holistically, and you have to not only design and build it, but you also have to run it for 10, 20 years. So you have to be very careful with your decisions. So I felt like it was a very interesting experiment that I wanted to pursue. And so in 2016, I kind of, towards the end, I put in my papers and I wanted to take the leap and take a crack at it. And that's when we started working on Dextrus, and we officially launched our first space in March of 2018. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how did it feel for you first, Robin? Because, designing a space and running a business is quite different. It's not really the same, right? So how was the experience like for you?
It's very messy. Nothing trains you for it. But it's interesting. There are a lot of parallels in architecture and in business. Architecture is as messy that you kind of have to understand. You have to be a jack of all trades. You have to understand design at multiple levels, and you also have to understand project management. You have to understand how to deal with people, your clients, your own bosses. So I felt like a lot of the skill sets are very similar. And that helped. And I think, as you know, in architecture, there are countless number of hours where you don't sleep. You're just constantly working. And that, too, in entrepreneurship has a lot of similarities. So it kind of fitted in quite easily. But I think I love the experience because every day is very different. There are a lot of challenges. So many things you don't think about, and you have to start thinking about very quickly, and you need to create solutions. So it's very exciting. It's now the 5th year, and I'm actually now going to the 6th year, and it's kind of nothing sort of stops surprising you. Like everything keeps coming on, so it's quite exciting that way.
So, Robin, did you ever think that a co-working works as a business? Because even WeWorks, it's IPO, and there were a lot of issues. The co-working isn't as clean and dry. It's not as straightforward as other people think. What are the challenges that come with running a co-working space, and as a business model, how successful is it?
I think the experience with WeWork, one had to realize that you can't rush it. You really have to think through your scale, your numbers. I think there is definitely a large business model, a very successful one for that matter. But you have to be prudent and you have to be patient because real estate is slow. You have to construct and you have to see how it plays out. Everything doesn't happen quickly. If you compare us to technology companies, a lot of them create an app, they send it out, it's on App Store. In about 2-3 months, you're seeing whether it's successful and you kind of have a fair idea of where you're headed. Unfortunately, in real estate, that doesn't happen that way. Building a wall, building all these things just take time. And then once you're out there, marketing takes a long time, and getting your name out there takes a long time. So it's I think the business model is particularly there, especially if you focus on a niche audience. Like, you have to think about your target audience, because there are different brackets. If you think about it like a hotel, you have different kinds of hotels. You have 2-star, 3-star, 5-star hotels, and there's different target audiences for each type. And I think that was a very important thing that dawned on us, especially when we did our research in that first 1.5 year, was that you can't come out thinking of creating a co-working space for everybody. You have to think about who your audience is, and I think that focus helped us a lot, and it kept things humble, and it kept things small. Like, you kind of had to try it, go bit by bit, see how the first center does, and then go forward with the next. So I think that all those points really helped us create a good perspective on how to go about tackling co-working. Yeah.
Okay, so Robin, at one place you were doing all the research on, who's the audience, who's going to be coming into the co-working space, and then you suddenly hit by a pandemic. So when the first lockdown happened, there was distress in real estate, commercial real estate, even in the co-working space because everything was shut. So how
Yeah.
did you deal with this?
Yeah, I think the pandemic has been a 100-year flood, maybe, for commercial real estate, for malls and things like that. It's messy, and nobody was prepared for it. I think I remember the time when we were thinking, oh, the lockdowns for 1 week, oh, it's for 2 weeks, okay, and 3 weeks, and it just kept on going and got worse and worse. I think one of the strategies we had, which helped us through the pandemic, was because of the target audience that I was talking about, our focus has always been professional companies, companies that are coming in from abroad. They're looking to set up space in India. These companies tend to think very long term. They understand the requirements, and they are prepared for a lot of these exigencies, which you can't kind of deal with, and they stay a lot more stable in their decisions. Having said that, there were still companies that wanted to discuss with us if there were any ways we could figure out whether it was discounting or helping them at a later stage. We had to kind of have a very transparent and honest discussion with all our stakeholders, because everybody was suffering. It wasn't just that, hey, we're not going to office, so office should be free. Even the landlords were suffering because they had taken loans to own real estate, et cetera, et cetera. And, the entire chain was crashing. And that's why having a conversation to keep that chain linked was very important. And that's what helped us through the pandemic a lot, because we were honest with our clients and we were able to figure out how to help where it was possible, and where it wasn't, we told them that we can't, and then we had to take some decisions that mutually worked in for both parties, for that matter. So I think that was a really important point, which was target audience helped us because we had companies that were quite stable in their outlook, and second was having a very transparent discussion with these companies. And I think the third thing that helps is that we're able to pivot and give clients less or more space as and when they want, and that's one of the benefits all co-working spaces are able to provide. Of course, there's nothing unique about that in any one space. But I think that helped because there was some clients who said, okay, we're going to scale down post our lock-in period and keep some office space because we know we'll need kind of rotation stuff and things like that. So I think those three parameters really helped us. I think the first two were very unique to Dextrus. The third one's a little bit more.
Generate to the industry. Okay,
Yeah.
so the USP of the co-working space is, of course, the flexibility that it gives to companies to keep their employees. Then they don't have to sink in the real estate cost for office premises. Now, how does it work for companies like you that manage co-working space? How do you build on predictability of revenues in the future? And how does it work for you now that the pandemic is wearing down, things are opening up, uh, more people are going back to office, and it may just be that companies are looking at a flexible way of working where some days people work out of home, some days they come to companies, some may just go closer to their homes to work for greater productivity. So
Yeah.
how does it work from here? And because of the flexibility of it all, how do you get predictability in your revenues?
Yeah, I think the first is that because of the USPs with Dextrus from design to service, etc., that kind of assures you a constant flow of clients. Because with word of mouth and all our other networks, the kind of it's spreading. And overall, in general, I think the what the pandemic did is it helped co-working come on the radar of a lot of companies and people who weren't looking at it. And we've been seeing a lot of different kinds of companies who are starting to very actively look at co-working because and they may not have done that before. And exactly for the reasons you said, because you're able to get flexibility not just of space but also of lease terms and things like that. I think predictability for us, there have been a couple of things that we've done. One is with the second space in Lower Parel, we've taken a lot larger of a space, and we've dedicated a lot of space to enterprise clients. And what are enterprise clients? We're looking at very customized and curated design for office space for clients who may want to look at a 3 year horizon. Usually you're looking at a lot of clients who look at 5 years. Earlier, it used to be almost 9 years. So I think the 3 year horizon also helps. 2 to 3 year horizon helps a lot, and that gives us a little bit more stability. And we are also kind of it's where we've done a lot of ingenuity and design there, where we're able to very quickly give different kinds of spaces for different clients over time, and even the same client over time, and be able to customize that relatively quickly. I think that benefit becomes huge, and because the market is nascent, people are realizing that advantage. There's a sort of period where you're educating a lot of the audience. You have to go through that, and that's that phase that we're in right now. And I do think that brings in a lot more stability from that perspective. I think the other side of the stability, that one that doesn't get talked enough about, is on the landlord side. If you do pure vanilla leases and things like that, obviously your cost becomes, as a co-working player, becomes much more problematic, right? Because it's a heavy cost, and you have to do that in some places because the location might be amazing. The landlord may not be keen on looking at a revenue share, but you need to capitalize on that because that space and the location is too unique to pass up. But I think overall, co-working spaces have to look at deleveraging that risk as well a little bit, or quite a bit, at least 50%, I would say. And that's where you could, if you get landlords who are willing to work with you and do revenue share agreements, and I think that would be a huge plus as well for co-working, because that will help the upside be amazing for landlords when the profits are soaring. And of course, when they're tougher times, it's managed. But over a long period of time of 20 years, if you think about it, they would have a person who's in there, a sort of operator in their space. So there's a lot of guarantee of future rent for them as well. So I think it goes both sides. Like, it's also on the client side, but also on the landlord side that you have to manage.
So, Robin, what metrics do you work with for your company's growth? What targets have you set for yourself? And at this point of time,
Yeah.
how do the margins look like?
So I mean, I think the first thing that you have to get off the bat when you're getting new spaces is that you want your occupancies to go up. And I think we always target to have a healthy 50 to 60% to make sure that your kind of your basic costs are protected. And I think in the pandemic, that's been difficult, but we've been able to keep above that. We've been able to keep our essential cost numbers lower. That's helped us as well. And you have to be very smart and sort of nimble about managing that process. And I think the most important part is occupancy. Like, you want to get a healthy rate occupancy there. And I think as we see the pandemic coming to a close, and of course we'll see waves. There's no doubt about it. The hope is that we won't see lockdowns, because lockdowns are what hurt sentiment the most. But when you see waves, and if you're seeing death rates and things like that stay very stable, almost minimal, then you're going to see sentiment continue to rise, and that's something we're very optimistic about from that perspective.
Okay, so what are you planning for the future? You have two centers. Are you planning to add more? Are you looking at different geographies? Popular office markets like Bangalore or Gurgaon, and what are your expansion plans?
That's a very interesting question because I feel like in real estate things get very complicated very quickly, so you have to be very careful. I mean, short answer is that we are keen to expand because something that we've realized, especially with the second center's launch, is that people are really liking the product, and that's always nice to feel. I mean, we got a sense of that in the first one, but the second one has turned out a lot more of a response, a positive response, and we've very quickly been able to fill our current inventory. And I think that's given us a lot of confidence that the product that we are making has a lot of takers, and it's giving us a lot of confidence. So we are keen on expanding, especially to different cities. Within this city, of course, Bombay I think has tremendous scope, but across cities as well. But I think how we do it is a very important point that we don't want to rush into, because we want to make sure that we have the right internal systems, be able to design each space as well as we do, because we have a very strong focus on design, and we don't want to let go of that. So keeping all of those priorities in mind, I think over the next year we would be looking at some avenues on how to expand, but carefully. I think that's always been our motto.
Right, Robin, you spoke about high occupancies and you said that the second center has seen good response and high occupancy. But
Yeah,
along with the occupancy, what about rentals? Because those were depressed during the pandemic.
yeah, yeah,
What is the outlook like? So I'm just trying to
yeah,
understand that occupancy is one of the metrics. How about revenue growth? What kind
yeah.
of revenue growth are you looking at in the next 3-4 years?
I think, I mean, for us, the revenue perspective, which is married to price, but also other products that we release, is very important because occupancy is one metric, but if you're heavily dependent on just seats, that's also going to be a problem. So we've been working on figuring out how to do cross-brand partnerships, etc., to be able to bring more revenue from different perspectives. But I think to come back on the point on the pressure on price per seat, I think that's definitely been there. We had expected it to perhaps be 5 to 10% higher than where it is currently, but it's a give and take. You kind of have to hold your price as well, because if you have belief that your product is worth it, you kind of need to decide that, okay, this is our threshold. Even if the market or maybe your competitors are really undercutting the market and trying to do it, I think you have to believe that if you do that, then you're also losing faith in what your product is. So it's a little bit of a risk, but it's always a balance. And as a result, we don't get as stressed by just undercutting everything and just selling everything. Because, tomorrow if we have to cut our rates by 50-60%, I'm sure we'll find takers, but, it's not a good long-term strategy. That's not going to secure your revenues for the future.
Yeah, but what are you penciling in for the future very quickly over the next 3 years?
So from the existing inventory, or do you mean like from our expansion perspective as well?
Existing inventory plus if expansion comes through, given the rentals you're taking, the kind of occupancy you're penciling
Yeah,
in, what kind of revenue growth are you looking at? Oh, say three
yeah.
to 5 years.
So I think over 3 to 5 years, we'd like to see 25 to 30% of growth easily. And I think that depends also on our expansion strategy. Our current centers themselves, we'd like to see a healthy rate of revenue growth, keeping occupancy at 90%, 95%. We were at 95% before COVID hit. There's no reason why we won't hit that. We had reached 95% in about a year and 3 months of being operational in BKC. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to see those same growth numbers with our current center. And I'm pretty optimistic that if that third lockdown doesn't happen, we'll probably reach there by December or Jan at the latest. And that'll enable us to really expedite what we're looking to do going forward.
Are you looking at raising any funding?
We're looking at options on from different perspectives, because funding in real estate can be mixed. If you work with partners who are looking at perhaps putting in the capital expenditure, then the revenue share model works great. And as a result, you don't have to look at high numbers of funding. But if you're looking at the capital expenditure yourself, then the equation changes. So it really depends on the partners that we work with going forward. And I think that's what's going to decide how we grow.
All right, Robin, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about Dextrus, the co-working space with 2 centers in Mumbai. Here's wishing you all the very best for the years ahead. Let's hope we see many more Dextrus centers all over the country.
Thank you, Anisha. Happy to be here. Really nice. Thank you.
That wraps up another episode of Green Shoots. We'll be back with another chat with another founder. Join us again. Till then, bye bye.